Welcome aboard FreeDive with Seapoint Digital, your go-to podcast for deep dives into the world of digital marketing. I'm Christy.
And I'm Anna Lynn.
Your hosts navigating through the currents of growth, strategy, and innovation in the digital realm.
We're going to talk. We're going to laugh. It's going to be a good time.
Let's dive in.
Welcome to the FreeDive podcast. We're going to mix things up a little bit this week. Christy's not on the podcast, so I know that's going to disappoint everybody, including myself. But I think we've got a fun conversation ahead of us because we've got Kevin here with us. Hi, Kevin.
Thanks, Bill. I feel a little, you're disappointed that I'm here, but that's okay.
Not really disappointed. I like your long-time listener, first-time caller vibe.
That's exactly what you're getting here because I have been listening to Christy for quite a long time, and I saw some interviews with you on the podcast, and I enjoyed them. So I like the one on AI that you did a few months back.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was kind of doing a little bit of a deep dive on that topic at the time, so I happened to find it. But where are you at on that topic right now, on the topic of AI?
Yeah, I think I'm still exploring new stuff coming out. I think everybody in the office knows I've become a big fan of Suno, which is a music generator. And unfortunately, I've made songs for pretty much everybody in the office, and so they could all have their own theme songs. And also my other friends who also have been like, what is Bill doing, making me these personalized songs? But, that's been my latest one.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so just for background, everyone, Kevin Burns, who's with us, is our newest employee at Seapoint. And he has been working remotely for a few months now.
Yeah, since springtime.
Yeah, since springtime. Working remote. He's an expat out of the country. And so this is his first opportunity to get to the office, and we've been doing some training, and so it seemed like a perfect opportunity to get Kevin on the podcast. And we thought with that, format-wise, we thought Kevin could do his best Charlie Rose impersonation. He's always wanted to be Charlie Rose.
Pre-cancellation.
Yeah, pre-cancellation Charlie Rose. Not creepy Charlie Rose.
The nice version that we all knew about before the New York Times article.
Yeah, your thoughtful grandfather.
That's right.
Charlie Rose. Yeah. And so give Kevin the opportunity to ask questions and do the interview.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hand that over to you.
Thank you. And what a great way to get to know you and the company that I now get to work with. So thank you very much for having me in. So what I understand is recently you celebrated 13 years here at Seapoint.
Yeah.
And it's grown from one guy, you, and now how many employees do you have now?
Yeah, so we're about 20 right now. It kind of fluctuates, as far as projects and then, turnover, but we're steady right around 20 right now. So it's definitely from those early days of being in my kitchen.
So I'd imagine that starting off at one, it doesn't feel very stable in the beginning because it's just one person with trying to balance all kinds of things.
It's not that it didn't feel stable. It was just the difference in scope and what you could accomplish.
Yeah.
So when you're just one person, it's really the knowledge you have on a technical level. And, you're more of a consultant. You kind of have to stay in your lane. Like for me, it was PPC management and SEO, kind of those technical parts of marketing. But there was a lot, like I'm not a graphic designer. I drive stick figures. I don't know video production. I don't make the words as nice as other people here make words. Yeah. So, it was just more like you just limited what you could take on.
So you appreciate having creative, having Vanessa, having bloggers and all these things to help out.
Yeah, and you think about like Anna Lynn as the creative director, like having someone who can take something technical and make it beautiful and make it marketing content. Again, like in Vanessa, having someone with that experience, not just graphic design as an illustrator, but like understanding the business. Anytime you kind of like tack that capability or bring someone new into Seapoint with a specific skill set, it gets exciting because you're like, oh, what can we do now?
Right, you open up new pathways.
Yeah,
what you can do providing services to these to your clients. So that's an interesting kind of a little side point you bring up. Being able to do new things for clients. Have you found any any stories when it comes to introducing new skills that you have in the company to a pre-existing client?
So yeah, that has been an interesting one because sometimes we'll have done something for a client for a number of years, and we almost forget we're not the type of agency that's quick to like upsell. So it's kind of funny. Like there's been times we've been working with a client maybe like 2-3 years, and we've been delivering certain services, and then all of a sudden the client's like, "Oh, I think I need to hire someone to do X, Y, and Z. Like I need to hire someone to be a content writer," and I'm like, "Whoa, we do that at C Point," and they're just like, "Oh, because it just hasn't come up in conversation." So that is the funny part about like how can I've always find it exciting, like when we get somebody new in the office and they might have a specific skill set, to think like, oh wow, how can we use them on these other projects, to just make our services better.
So you don't want to overmarket yourself to your clients. I see.
Yeah,
that's good. So balancing your life with 20 employees now, and it's been about that size for a year or two?
Yeah, I would say about probably the last year we've been about that level.
Yeah.
The last 3 years have been a growth period for us as far as personnel goes. We were probably around the 10 mark, I would say, before that. So like in the last 3 years, it's kind of ramped to that next level.
And how is it running a company about that size here in Maine?
It has its challenges. Marketing especially, like it's, has its own challenges where your clients are farther away. It's not just running a company like staffing for 20 local people. So clients are farther away, personnel's farther away, because you can go out and get somebody who doesn't have to be in the southern Maine market.
Right.
If you can find the right person, like yourself, people are all over the place as far as working environments. So,
Right.
those are the advantages of it. But it can be a lot to juggle. For me, the biggest challenge I think was going from like very, very like hands-on client side with like the technical things, like, oh, how's the Google ads performing? As we've gotten bigger, my role has become more of how do we keep the agency moving in a direction? How do we empower the people that work at C Point to do their best work without getting frustrated? And
Is there a lot of kind of push-pull or stress when it comes to bringing on new people, but also keeping in mind the budget? Because you have new clients coming in, you have the existing budget, your monthlies coming in, but then you need to expand on the employee side. And it's not like you have this massive surplus in January, so let's bring in 3 new employees, all this. How do you handle that?
Yeah, that is a difficult to balance, because it's hard because you don't want to overextend. If you have extra personnel that are not being capitalized, user capitalization, you don't want to bring people on that aren't going to have work, and just the cost of the overhead on to the business is just not. But then that balance is making sure you have enough work, or the work that's coming in, that you're not turning down stuff that's a good fit. So that really is always the hardest balancing part, because it's like a chicken and the egg. You're not going to get new customers if you can't fulfill their needs, but you don't want to get the personnel if you don't have the customers. I think we've been really fortunate. We've made hires, and at the time I've thought to myself, wow, I've kind of gone out on a ledge here as far as hiring somebody. As far as could I fully utilize them? Like, I know I need their skills, I know I need their experience, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to utilize them as to the value.
Right.
And then, but it seems like every time we've hired like that, the project will come up, and work has just accelerated in that regard.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because I can imagine that could be a really stressful moment where you bite off something, because you're extremely loyal. It seems like all the employees here are extremely loyal to you. And so the idea of, oh, let's try this out, and if it doesn't work out, we'll just get rid of a couple of people, is not the mentality here.
Right, and that is a hard, like, I've never had to do a layoff.
Yeah.
I think that would be a very difficult scenario to be in, and taking it just way too personally. But that that is the case. I think one of the advantages in our field in marketing is less of our work is project based and more of it's retainer based. So that does make it a little bit easier in the sense that there's not a lot of monthly fluctuation in billables. You tend to know, like, and you could project the year fairly well, what you have based on your current clients. We do really well as far as we have minimal churn. So I think that's another speaks to what how well the agency does as far as the quality of the work. But we very rarely lose a client. And it's usually, if they do, it's, they're moving on to some new project themselves, the client. But because of that, there's a lot of stability. I don't really fear on a day-to-day basis, like, hey, we're going to lose these clients, and then therefore, we're going to be scrambling on business development. It doesn't make me go out to look for work when there's not a necessity to. And it's not growth just for the sake of growth. It's growth for what fits in with us as an agency.
Let's take a turn and talk a little bit about disappointments. Maybe thinking about clients that maybe you weren't going after them in the beginning, but you got to a point in trying to pursue them, and you were excited this was going to be an amazing connection, taking to the next level, and it didn't work out. Do you have any stories about that?
Yeah, there's a few. I think, the process of pitching a client is always a hard one because you're spending a lot of energy, you're spending a lot of resources. I know there's been a few times we've flown out to, meet with a client to do the pitch, and in your mind, all that time you've spent analyzing their needs to pitch to them, it helps you get so excited about the project, right? So you're like, oh, we've got invited in on this RFP, we've done, gone through all their numbers and and we're building strategies, that we can present. And, there's other good agencies out there. You get it. You don't win every pitch you take. So there's times where you go and, you're so excited and you're like, oh man, I've got this one in the bag. And they go with another agency and it's a little bit like you kind of fly back to Maine with you don't know until you get home, but you kind of just like when they send you that email saying, hey, we've got another direction, you kind of, it bums you out a little bit on that.
Yeah. Learning experiences from that? Did you take something away from it that you were able to put to use later on?
I think one of the things is understanding, what really is the intent. Did you get an RFP because they're just trying to tick a box to say we have to have X amount of agencies come in, but we, basically we're already going to work with our incumbent agency. So, the expense and time of trying to put a presentation together for that. But again, that's just that's the nature of the work. You go through the steps, and you might build a brand new long-term relationship, and that's what you got to do to take that.
Yeah. I think it reminds me of a story. I think it was in the 90s. Karl Malone, basketball fan. Are you a basketball fan?
Not
too much.
I mean,
he played for the Utah Jazz, and they lost again to Michael Jordan and the Bulls and Scottie Pippen. And at the end of the post game, they're having interviews.
I'm glad, by the way, you gave Scottie Pippen due, just in case he listens to the podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why.
Yeah.
Just in case he's coming next week.
Yeah.
And so they ask him, what did you learn this time from losing? And, Karl Malone had kind of a country accent. He said, well, I learned it sucks to lose.
Yeah.
Please Google it and watch the real version, and it's funny.
It does suck to lose, though.
It does suck to lose, right?
I mean, it sucks to lose when you lose on a pitch. It sucks to lose when you lose a client.
Yeah.
Again, you lose clients, and it's always to me like the hardest part because I want to be like, oh, what could I have done differently, or what maybe I should have changed resources here, or done or spoken up. And sometimes clients just aren't good fits either, personality wise. But then kind of mentally being like, oh, I wish I could get these guys back, and obsessing about what their numbers look like instead of just being like, all right, well that was a project we worked on this year, but you know what? We've got clients who love us and trust us, and let's just really double down on those ones that we're seeing those great results and people who trust our vision for their, and it's a lot of trust, right? Like, clients are giving us thousands and thousands of dollars to spend in media for them. They're trusting us to get the strategy right. That's a huge amount of trust, and that's like, when you have that, like, just to feel like, yeah, I really want to reward that trust with putting out just some exceptional work.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the opposite end of the spectrum, the successes.
Right.
Was there a moment as you're going through these 13 years where you got a client that you just never expected, and you were just so excited, so high about it?
If you're watching this and you're one of our clients, the answer is you.
You are the special one.
You are the special client. You know who you are.
That's right.
Yeah, there are. I'm not going to go.
We'll get it out. Post,
I don't want to be like, I have a favorite child. But yeah, no, there's definitely been clients I've been just like over the moon, either to get or expand services.
I'd imagine it's like when you're a smaller company with certain size clients and you get a particularly large one.
Yeah.
That was bigger, like catching a fish.
Right.
You're happy you caught all the fish.
Right. And I think like it's really the tools and the resources they have to work with.
Right.
So like there's a huge excitement when you get a larger corporate client that has a lot of resources, because there's a lot more you can do, a lot more you can test. And there's brand knowledge behind it as well. So the building blocks are there. It's a little bit more difficult, smaller clients, or, what's always a difficult situation is if you have a client that's coming to you because their performance has been really bad. And it's not that the marketing has been bad, but the product is not great. Or the company culture that has caused that product to not be great is not super great. And then you realize pretty quickly, that they expect you to use marketing to be this magic. Marketing is magic, right?
What would you say about that? What are the typical client expectations coming in versus the reality of what should be expected?
That is all across the board. And I think that speaks to the professionalism of the client too. Clients with developed marketing departments or marketing resources that are internal, they have a lot more measured expectations working with an agency and understanding, things take time. It's not a sprint. It's a large momentum moving endeavor. Sometimes smaller clients with smaller budgets, they're the ones that are just like, I want to expend as little as possible.
Right.
But I want to see amazing results.
Right.
And that can be hard to temper that realistically. And it can be hard because, again, the process of bringing on a new client, right? You've got 2 or 3 other agencies they're talking to, and they're all like, oh yeah, we're gonna make you rich, or we're just gonna, and throw in projected numbers. So that's a hard one when you're going into those situations and you're like, here's what I think is realistic. Like looking at what your footprint, what your tech stack is, this is where I see you at. Again, it's people who are used to that idea of being fed those higher expectations that may not be realistic. Then they get in a situation where, they expect more. But I think that also speaks to churn, right? So I think a lot of these agencies that overpromise in the pitch, then they get the client, and the client stays with them 6 months to a year. Maybe they sign them on a 1-year deal, and they never resign after the 1 year because the expectations that were given them were so much higher. And we get a lot of that, like people we pitch, or people that come to us, I should say, and they're very disillusioned because a marketing agency has just promised them the moon. And, and when you see what they were promised, you're like, well, that's not reasonable to expect that. But that's what the end client thought, they were sold the vision.
Yeah. Let me talk about that. Other agencies that do overpromise.
Yeah.
How do you view them? Are they just naive? Are they just hungry? Are they scammy? What do you think's going on with those?
I think there's like the full spectrum of those things that you, yeah. There's some that are inexperienced a lot of them are hungry, especially newer agencies. I think the HubSpot ecosystem was a lot like that, especially like when you think like 4 or 5 years ago. It was a lot of like people that were like, oh, it's easy to get into marketing. You can just get HubSpot, be a HubSpot partner,
Right.
and HubSpot's going to tell you to do things the HubSpot way, and you're just going to follow it and be a HubSpot evangelist, and it will all work out. And and HubSpot was very optimistic.
Yeah.
And then so they took that type of like over optimization,
Optimization.
optimization.
No.
No, that's not right.
Overly optimistic.
There's the word. Words, right? Took that and ran with it as far as what they promised the clients, and then like HubSpot, and then they churn off HubSpot, they churn off the agency, and where I think if it was a little bit more tempered coming in, they probably retain clients better. But you see a lot of those early HubSpot agencies that are all either absorbed or they've moved on to other things. They're all crypto managers now.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have these, because I've seen agencies that are that way. They're very sales forward.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just pushing out 50, they'll even tell you have to make 50 cold calls a day
Right.
to new clients. And they I think their churn is 3 or 4 months.
Right.
If they don't sign them for a long-term contract. And that to me is just misery.
Yeah.
You're never attending to a client, developing. And from what I see here, it takes time to develop, make sure you're getting the numbers are coming in that are correct, and then you can slowly dial things in.
Yeah, and that's that measured approach, I think, is what gets missed. That idea of like, we're just going to throw a bunch of stuff on the wall, and we're going to do the flashy things. Oh, you know what you should have? TikTok. TikTok is everybody. That's going to solve your, TikTok is not going to make your company successful just because you started a TikTok account.
Right.
Like that's like example.
Yeah.
That's an oversimplification of it, but it's just like sometimes they just throw what is the flashy.
They want the silver bullet.
Yeah, the silver bullet. What's in vogue right now, as far as what they see other clients doing. Other agencies doing, and that I think versus like the really fundamentals.
Yeah, that's all the kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of the analytics. Is that a challenge because on a larger company, for example, they might have a marketing team and they have their way of managing that data, and they're bringing you or us on as the digital side of it, and you have to play in their playground effectively with their data. Is that a frustration sometimes, or how does that go?
It can be. Sometimes the trouble is getting the appropriate data.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like larger clients, there's a lot of sensitivities about internal data and an external team accessing data points, which we understand. Sometimes it's a case of we've been brought in, but there's internal resources that have very different views of how marketing should be done.
Yeah.
So there's those sensitivities as well. Sometimes it's a case of we just want to work with internal marketing teams and not coming across as though we're there to fix things or change things versus really supplementing their efforts. So that can be hard too, to convey that as far as the collaborativeness versus that not getting combative with in-house marketing directors or marketing teams.
Yeah. Interesting. So 13 years, to kind of bring it back to where we started. 13 years you've been doing this, and that, to me, that shows that you have a good ability to plan financially, because you didn't hit a wall. Because I can imagine there were moments where you were coming up against some financial stresses. Is there a certain amount of months that you try to keep in the bank for bad times, or how do you handle that side of it?
Yeah, so I think that also goes to being conservative, both on my personal finances, so how much I take out of the company, but also I think that's just being conservative with company expenditures. Mm-hmm. And that can be a trap, right? You get bigger, you get a lot of software, like there's a lot of, you have to examine, like, am I expending like on subscriptions that we don't really need? Am I, that side of things. as far as planning for that, I think that's a part of that is not overscaling is really what it comes down to. Understanding like the personnel that I have in place for the amount of retainers I have. And that's the situation. These agencies, they scale so quickly. They bring a lot of workforce in, workforce that may not be that experienced all at once or used to working with each other. But then they need sales to start churning out, and then the sales, that side. So I think if you take a measured approach to growth, maybe you bring on 2-3 clients a year versus that idea of I need 20 clients to come on.
Right.
It gives you the ability to do it in a responsible way.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Bill.
Did Deb come up with any questions?
Okay.
Yeah, why don't we go the rapid fire questions from around the office?
Rapid fire questions.
All right.
So if you had to fire one person in this office besides present company, it couldn't be me. Who would it be? No pressure. This is coming from Anna Lynn.
You know what? If I had to fire one person, it would be the property management company in this building.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good answer.
That's a politically
That's a
correct
safe answer.
Safe answer.
Here's a fun question. What's the longest you've ever held a serious face in a meeting without actually listening?
Oh, man.
Loaded question.
I think I've done an hour. I think I've done, and I will tell you this. I am very good at a head nod to go along with a sentiment of what's going on in the meeting if I'm not actually mentally there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very good to be like,
You know, I kind of got that feeling a couple times during this podcast, but that's
exactly.
See? You were good though.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the most outrageous expense you've approved without reading the fine print? Asking for a friend. I am asking for a friend. Anna Lynn.
That would be a hard question to ask. I wonder what that would be. No. We've gotten some things like office swag things that have been a little bit more expensive than I anticipated or realized until after I looked at the invoice. But
Like Thai lunch today.
yeah, or a crate of Yeti cups.
Yeti. Brought to you by Yeti.
This podcast is brought to you by Yeti today. Oh, the Pointy Awards. That was pretty frivolous. So those who don't know, we
Got us a client, though.
it got us a client. So, but we reenacted the awards, the Dundee Awards from The Office, and we did a red tie event out back. That was a little bit on the frivolous side. I think next year when we take everybody on a bus to Gettysburg, might also be in that realm. But Booze Cruise, yeah, we're just reenacting The Office now.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so
okay, because I was gonna suggest submarine trip to the Titanic, but
yeah,
I'm still waiting for the rage room.
yeah.
The rage. Oh, I thought that's what the basement was.
Yes.
The rage room. Okay.
We're gonna get the next door one and then turn that into a rage room.
Okay. A new question coming in. What team members' emails do you delete the most without reading? And by the way, I'll let you think about that, because I'm just sensing in these questions that are coming in a lot of insecurity.
Yeah,
Fired,
you notice
deleting
that?
emails.
Everyone's like, "How have you been so successful?" Everyone lives in fear in the
Fear.
office.
Yeah.
Probably the person whose emails I delete the most without reading would either be Dan.
Oh, that's sad. That makes me sad a little bit.
I know. Or Courtney. Courtney probably
Just say me.
believes. Yes. Oh,
Courtney believes it's her.
yeah. Courtney's like, I'm just confirming what I already know.
Yeah.
No, you know what I do delete all the time, and that's why Courtney probably asked the question. Courtney always sends me meeting invites, and I somehow delete all the meeting invites that Courtney sends me before I accept them. And then Courtney just has to go in, and she just goes into my calendar and adds, like, manually, like, just makes me have the meeting because she knows that I'm not going to accept it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a pony question.
Pony question.
Annalyn was told that there was a office pony.
Little Sebastian.
Here's the question. How much longer do you think you can promise that before people quit?
You know, I feel like that holding the carrot out on the pony issue has been what's kept people going for years.
Oh, so you think it's the opposite. It's actually keeping them going. It's not driving them away.
Right. Like, they're just like, maybe if you work a little harder, we'll get that pony. Prove me wrong, kids. Prove me wrong.
I think I know the answer to this one. I think the answer is me. But the question is, if you could swap jobs with anyone in the company for a day, who would it be and why? Because my job's pretty good so far.
I might say Christy, just so I could be fabulous.
I was going to say it was the purse. You want to carry the purse.
No, just to be that, like, sweet and sassy person who rules the office, like, and really is in charge of the office.
Okay.
I think that would be a good one. I admire Mark a lot, like, in his client, how he handles clients. So, I mean, that would be kind of a fun one. If I'm Tim for the day, do I get usage of his boat after hours? That would be good.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Huh.
So
I'm gonna go with Christy. I'm gonna go with Christy on that one.
Okay, for the purse, from what I understood. So you reference The Office a lot.
Yes.
In a previous interview, you mentioned Michael Scott is your persona.
Unfortunately.
But I'm going to ask to go a little deeper.
Yes.
Why? And is there anybody else that you have personality traits that you identify with?
Well, I say that because I think, like, most men of my age would be like, oh, I'm Jim. Like, I want to be Jim.
They're fools, by the way.
They're fools, all.
Right.
But then knowing, like, my propensity to make awkward moments in the office, and you know what? What's funny is I was actually thinking about this the other day. As the company's gotten bigger and more roles, and especially my interactions with clients can be much more like I'm there to listen to what the team has done. I personally haven't done the work. I'm just there to, observe and answer questions and be there support for the team. But because you don't have that, like, same, like, I'm not there to be like, your numbers increased by 12% because I did this thing on the ads. I feel like sometimes I'm falling into that trap of now just being like the kind of schmoozy cheerleader sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's when the Michael Scott comes out, because you're just trying to make conversation. And when you do, you just get into that awkward, that kind of awkward, like, hey, everybody. And you drop in and, yeah. And, like, everybody else is, like, really trying to do hard work and, talk about the work. And I'm just like, hey,
a distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got to be careful of that a little bit.
Yeah, I think I could identify with that. I like Michael Scott's character, but I kind of feel like, for me, he wanted to make people happy. And I love that about him.
I think that is the underlying my Michael Scott part.
Yeah.
Like, I want people to be afraid of me, afraid of how much they love me.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I also feel a similar in the effort to make people happy and to love us.
Yeah.
We're wildly offensive.
That is also true.
But it's so sincere.
Who was the boss on The Office? Who was the boss on The Office for that short period of time?
He had a very unique cadence the way he spoke, right?
Yeah, it's What was it?
Robert
Robert
California.
That's really my ultimate goal, and I just eventually want to be Robert California.
Okay. Do you have an inner persona, like a secret person you identify with that you've never told?
I just answer the phone and I'm like, I am the Lizard King. You don't even know my real name.
You want that level of
Fear.
It's the tone of the voice he had.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I'm very sensitive to voice tones.
So, Kevin.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It was fun. Are you firing me?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
it was a good run.
It was a great run. I mean,
Yes.
day one podcast.
But, We kind of like to bring you in the office, fatten you up, and feed you.
Yeah.
And then just before we, let you go, so you feel like you leave on a.
Well, I appreciate. I'm getting a little teary-eyed.
We're like, we gotta send Kevin out to the farm. No. No. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah.
Is this your first time on a podcast?
This is my first time on a podcast. Yes.
Wow. Maybe
I've seen them. I've watched them.
Maybe you're like, I'm a white guy with a microphone. This just feels so right to me. You're gonna just go
Right.
home and start your own podcast.
Right. There was a guy in Germany that did that.
Yeah.
He felt very empowered with a microphone. It didn't end well for him.
Don't start growing little mustaches.
No little mustaches. But yeah.
Yeah.
So
This went off the rails. Yeah. So
this is called the Deep Dive Podcast.
the deep dive.
The Deep Dive.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here with us on the podcast today. Thanks to Kevin and his first time on the podcast. I'm sure we're going to have him again. And when we can think of more exciting things to talk about, yeah.
We'll see you then.
Catch you next time, everybody.
It's the end.
No, it's not. There's more.
There's always more.
Don't be sad. You can catch our full video interviews on our YouTube channel. Come find us.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with your friends so that we're not sad.
And follow us on TikTok.
And Instagram.
It'll make your day happier, promise.
And we'll know if you do. Until next time.